this little girl grew up in Dallas, Texas. The product of a Vietnam vet turned electrician, mother who was a waitress. Didn't have a lot, but had a lot. And wasn't ever really supposed to amount to much. Whose teacher told her that, oh, she's pretty, but there's not blood upstairs, you know. Who for some reason was always said that she was a helper. You know, that tended to be a label that I got from a very early age. Always wanted to help. And I think that informs where I am at this point in my life.
So you knew you were a helper.
I was always just there helping people, helping my friends, helping my parents, helping my family. And so I think that's just been something that's been part of me. I don't say that because that's something that I'm super proud of, although I am proud of it. I think it comes from always wanting to please and probably never feeling good enough. There was substance abuse in my home as a kid and absenteeism a lot. And so that makes kids want to do certain things and be certain things and be seen and make a name for themselves whatever possible way they can in order to survive. But
a lot of overachievers have that kind of.
A lot of overachiever perfectionists, people that have screaming imposter syndrome. It's just all kind of part and parcel to what makes us who we are. And so if you can use that to be a strength, you're going to get ahead of the game, but you got to address your trauma first. And that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about in this session this morning.
Okay,
but we'll get there.
So tell us, so you hear this teacher say this, did she say it to your face?
I overheard her talking to her peer.
Oh, how old were you?
I was 8 in 3rd grade. Yeah.
What did you think? Did you believe it?
I think I had been a little programmed with some family stuff that it just felt like, oh yeah, that makes sense. You know, that makes sense. I struggled in school. I wasn't the best student, 4.0 in college, by the way, different learning styles. Different learning styles. You give me a Scantron. Does anybody know what a Scantron is? You fill in the blanks, ACT, the multiple choice, forget it. You know, ACT, SAT really struggled. But if you give me a different way of learning, I'm gonna kill it. But
how do you learn that?
I think I'm both visual and audio.
Yeah. So it's not the test. Like it's not the standardized test, it's the experience.
It's the experience. And I think honestly, that's how most people learn most from like, if you want to anchor and learn, you learn immersively if you're able to do it. That's why on the job is so great. I learn the best things in life when I'm actually doing something.
I feel like, and what do you think about this? I feel like now there are a lot of people, maybe Gen Z is changing, but there are a lot of people who are afraid to learn things on the job. They feel like they have to have this credential or a stamp or go through the courses before, you know, people don't want to fail in front of people or, what do you think about that?
I don't think I had much blueprint. I was the first in my family to go to college. And I didn't have any corporate role models in any part of my family, my extended family either. But I just had a will to succeed. I wanted so desperately to make something of myself. And that's really what it was. And I was going to make something of myself no matter what. And so when I came back from undergrad, my dad said, you got 90 days and you need to get a job. Here's the newspaper. Here's your red pen. Like, no kidding. Go find your job. And he's like, if you want to be successful, you go out there, you get yourself a 401k. Because at the time, in the early 2000s, 401ks were big. And my father and my mother my dad was an electrician, my mother was a waitress, didn't have access to that kind of stuff. And so to them, that was a huge mark of success. So I'm like, sir, yes, sir. That's what I do. And I just tunnel visioned into finding my way into a corporation, and I landed at a company called Raytheon, which is now Raytheon Technologies. And the reason I landed there was because my high school bestie from choir's dad was a director at Raytheon. And I was sitting at his kitchen table one day lamenting that I needed to find a job with a 401k and I didn't know what to do. And he pulled me. And so many people have pulled me up alongside them to shadow them. And it has been the differentiator in my success.
When you went to college, what did you study? What did you think you were gonna do?
So I thought I was gonna be a singer. Because that's one thing I'm good at. And I thought that because I had constantly been praised in my life for being a good singer, that maybe I could make something of myself that way. And then I realized that that was never something I wanted as a job, and it probably wouldn't pay too much either because I wasn't gonna be Beyonce. I changed to psychology, which helps me every freaking day, by the way, but is not something that I chose to do in my life. And I ended up going and getting an MBA.
Mhm. So you got this bachelor's in psychology
Mhm.
and a minor in voice. What did you do with the voice credits?
So, I got a full ride to college. This is how I got to college, was through singing. Because there wasn't gonna be the means for me to go otherwise. And so that paid for sang for my supper.
What kind of what kind of thing?
Classically trained jazz and blues. So I went to the University of Mississippi. So I was down in Memphis singing in the jazz and blues bars. I had a wonderful time singing on like the riverboats and things like that. And parlayed that into like gigs, wedding singer, cover bands, things like that. Other things.
Can we go to the jazz estate and like would you still sing now? Like do you still enjoy it?
I did. When I lived in Boston, I sang with the Boston Pops. When I lived in Washington, DC, I was a soprano with the National Symphony. When I lived in Dallas, I was a soprano with the Dallas Symphony. It was just kind of a hobby gone awry, just a joy. Music is part of my every day.
Can your kids sing?
They can sing. My daughter Alice, who's 10, was Elsa in Frozen, the musical last year. So we get the piano's always being played and somebody's always singing really loud in the house. And that's just something that connects us.
Okay, so you sang all the way through college, but you switched majors.
I switched majors to psychology because I don't know. I thought that again, helping people. No, that wasn't my dad never really talked to me about 401k until I came home and he gave me 90 days and he said, do that, go to that. And I said, okay. And I did. Right. So this is a mentoring talk. Let's get into some of that. I can't help but talk about this because it really primed me for, I would say, the premise of, with your permission, what I'd like to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Montgomery, Alabama, all last week with Brian Stevenson. Have you ever seen the movie Just Mercy? He wrote that book. He's a civil rights lawyer that started the Equal Justice Initiative. And I was with the Equal Justice Initiative for last week. And we were talking about and thinking about, DEI, right? Talking about and thinking about, how do we continue to do what we do? And we're talking about the enslavement of Native Americans to African Americans and to modern mass incarceration, like all of those different things that we're covering. And one of the people that the Equal Justice Initiative, specifically Brian Stevenson, helped, because they do work with people who are innocent but on death row, getting them off of death row, was Anthony Ray Hinton. And Anthony Ray Hinton was in prison for 30 years for a crime he didn't commit. And he was there with us last week, and he spoke to our group. And he talked about his whole journey. But one of the most powerful things that will never leave me, and that I think is so important for us to center ourselves in every day of our lives, if we can, is what he said, which was, at the end of his speech, he stood up and he looked across the the room and was like, what would you do if you had another chance at life? And I looked at this man and I just thought to myself, oh my God, if he can go through what he went through and come out of it with this much positivity, hope, optimism, and dogged determination to make something of his life with the years that he has left, because he's in his 60s now. So can we. And so some of the things that I wanted to talk about were really centered around the idea that this isn't a dress rehearsal and every day counts. And so that's kind of what I wanted to hit on. And as I described my journey and things that have happened. Yeah.
That way you mentioned the first mentor, which was your best friend's father, did you say? The one that got you the first job?
Yeah, he was a horrible boss, but he put me into a leadership development program with a great company. And that leadership development program kind of set me on my path. I was in business, I was in international business first. I was doing that, it was amazing, I was flying all over the world. And then I had this cross-functional rotation assignment that I needed to take in human resources. And I was like, that's amazing. Because I'm thinking to myself, I'm a helper. I have a psych degree. This is where, you know, I can do the most good, whatever. And I landed in not just HR, but I landed in DEI. And that was where I first realized that they would actually pay you to do civil rights work in a corporate setting. Because one of the things that we didn't really touch on is like, we should get to is like, how did I get DEI? What am I doing in DEI? The whole story there, you know, acknowledge the obvious here. But I went to the University of Mississippi, and well, first of all, I was raised by parents that were very inclusive and always had a diversity of people at our dinner table at all times. They were very giving, loving people, and there was never a mouth that went hungry with the circle that they had. And so there was just a diversity of people in my life. That's foundation and core to who I am, for sure. Thank goodness for that. But then I went to the University of Mississippi and I got involved with student government. And at the time they were playing Dixie at halftime. Colonel Rebel in his Confederate soldier uniform was our mascot. And they waved the Confederate flag at football games. And I'm like, what? And so we weren't able to get the flag banned from the football stadium, but we were able to find a loophole and ban sticks from the stadium. And if you don't have your stick, it's hard to wave your flag. And so, you know.
Was that a student government thing, or did you just go raise heavy with the?
Oh my gosh, I was one of many.
Yeah, okay.
I was not the leader,
Okay.
I was one of many. And I certainly didn't do as much as I could have done. I'll be the first to admit that. There's no hero sitting up here. I'm just somebody who gets involved and over time has gotten into leadership. But it all started because I was a follower. I just knew what to follow. I knew what to follow. I knew who to follow. And now people follow me, which is insane, but that's what happened. Anyway, so that kind of started my, we got Dixie thrown out of the school's repertoire, musical repertoire in the marching band. And Colonel Rebel became the Rebel Black Bear at the time. So that was foundational to my journey. I would say what also was foundational to my journey was being in international business and traveling over the world with 32 countries and counting. I worked Middle East, I worked with Asia, PAC, and just that worldview, priceless. Diversity of experiences, priceless. Don't stay in one career your entire life. Don't stay in one stovepipe. And wrapping up on the career side, I spent what was supposed to be 1 year in DEI and I parlayed it into 3 because I loved it so much.
So that was the rotation should have been a year, but you stayed.
Should have been a year, but I stayed for 3.
Okay.
Because I loved it so much. And then I'll be honest with you, I chickened out. I thought, I'm not good enough for this. Maybe nobody takes me seriously. This is hard. This is really hard. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this. And I quit. And I went back into international business. At the time, this was the right move for me. I was a lobbyist on Capitol Hill. I had a wonderful time. But there was one moment, I was talking to you about this at lunch. There was one moment where I'll never forget. And some of my team, I think, is listening on the line. They know the story. When I was in the Senate office building, and I had just come out of Senator McCain's office with his staffers. So that's how long ago this was. And I had just helped negotiate a big arms sale in the state of Arizona. And I went to the bathroom and I just, the sweat, your heart starts to beat when you're about to throw up. And it was one of those moments when I just looked in the mirror and I said, what am I doing? What am I doing? My life is not aligned with, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, but it's not this. And I quickly came to realize that I could be marrying so many of my skills, lobbying, whatever, international business, with this love that I had, the civil rights that had been pulled throughout a lot of my life. And because life is weird, the next day, my old boss, the chief diversity officer from Raytheon, who had gone to Hewlett Packard, called me and he said, would you ever think about coming back to DEI? Because there's this role on our team. You have to lead 160 employee resource groups in 30 countries. But you figure it out. And I did. And I've been back in DEI since 2013 with Hewlett Packard, DXC Technologies, and Northwestern Mutual called me about 5 years ago to come head up D&I for them. And I've never looked back.
Okay, let's look back right now. Let's go back to, I'm not good enough. I can't do this. Maybe people won't take me seriously as much as you want to. Get into that. What was happening? What was hard about it? What was making you feel like DEI wasn't for you? What made you leave it? Like what actually was going on in your mind at the time?
I just didn't know that I had to devote the rest of my career. Because I mean, sometimes I get tunnel vision and I'm like, if I make this decision, then I'm going to be doing that forever. Which is not true. It is so not true. You're not going to be doing anything forever because the only thing constant in life is change. That is so true. But I just never felt good enough. I think my imposter syndrome got to me, and I also, because the work's freaking hard. And right now, it's the hardest it's ever been because it's always been political, but now it's hyper political. And how do you bring both sides of the aisle to the table? It's impossible. But it's so important. It's so important.
Okay,
So that brought me back.
You come. Okay, wait, before we go.
The other thing,
Yeah.
is one of the most underrated power moves that you will ever make is not listening to what other people say about you. And not letting what you say to yourself get in the way of what you know to do. One of the most underrated power moves is just, what does MLK say? If you can't crawl, if you can't walk, crawl. If you can't run, walk, you can't walk, crawl, but just whatever you do, keep moving. And your gut knows what you're supposed to keep moving on. Your gut knows.
When you left DEI, did the political international did that feel safer to you? Because I mean, you didn't pick something that wasn't hard. Like you went from one hard thing to Senator John McCain's office. That's not like a step back.
A lovely person, by the way. Yeah, no, I don't know why. I have always continued to take on challenges. Again, I think it's just because as a kid I had something to prove. I am good enough. Damn it, good enough, and I'm going to show you. I don't know how I'm gonna show you, and bounce around to these different careers and things like that. I'm gonna go get this degree, and then I'm gonna go get that degree, and I'm gonna go sing here, and I'm gonna go, but it's all led me here. So what's the saying? Wouldn't trade nothing for the journey I've been on. Wouldn't trade nothing for it.
Does the success, the different successes and the challenges that you face and surmount, does it erase the imposter syndrome? Does it mute it? Does it subdue it? What happens to that inside of you?
It never goes away. I do think that it is something that makes us good. I do think that having to stand up and find that courage every day makes us stronger over the long game, but it never goes away. It didn't go away this morning when I knew it was coming here. But if not me, then who? And that's what brought me back to D&I. If it's not me, then who? I get access to rooms because of the way I look. A lot of people don't. That's power. And I know that. And we'll just leave it at that around the DEI conversation in corporate America today.
Got it. The successes, since you've been at Northwestern Mutual, I was reading a little bit about, in terms of gender, 50-50 split. And there's been increases in women leaders, people of color. Talk a little bit about those strides and how that was accomplished. You published the Northwestern Mutual's first public DEI report. Transparency with staff who clearly love you because people are here and logged on, and talk about that. Like, what did you do differently? What is your team doing differently to produce the results?
Well, the word is team, and I've got the best team that there possibly could ever be. The people on my team are people who I just genuinely love, and they're some of the smartest, most authentic, honest, forward thinking, but at a pace that works. And that's part of this whole answer to your question. But just, you're nothing without your team. And one quote that I love, and full quotes, one quote that I love is about leadership, and that if you aren't willing to serve, then you are not cut out to be a leader. And all of these people on my team are servant leaders, and I try to be one as well. And so, my team is very diverse. It's one of the most diverse in the company. And that alone, like you're gonna win. You're gonna win with a diverse team, because the diversity of thought is everything towards creativity and innovation. And we now know, we didn't know it necessarily 20 years before, but there's so much data out there that speaks to that, but I've lived it every day since I've been in D&I. But we have the highest levels of women and people of color, not just from a representation standpoint, but in leadership that we've ever had. And that extends to our board and our senior leadership team. So board, C-suite, everything. We've got promotion rates and attrition rates that we're proud of. Not to say that there's not a blip. There are always blips. But we've got the highest employee engagement scores by demographic cut. And so we're doing a lot of things. How do we do it? I think it starts at the top. We've got a very committed CEO. None of this is going to be like ground shaking here. You've heard it. If you have a committed leader at the senior level of the organization, there's not a lot you can't do. And through John, who is now retiring, if you saw that on the news, he will be missed, but we've got Tim coming in, who's going to be exceptional. We were able to do not just little things like put the numbers out in a transparent way, but more importantly on the corporate dashboards, you're actually, what gets measured gets done. You can see things like that. But starting things like the Sustained Action for Racial Equity Task Force, which is an 80-person cross-functional team led by John and myself and many other leaders in the organization, that's looking at what's going on from a racial equity standpoint in the organization. And not just talking about employees, but what's happening with our field reps, what's happening with how we show up in the community. You know, what does impact investing look like for us? So any different facets of our business, from a racial equity standpoint, and we're now, what, 4 years in doing that. We also have a gender effort, like our women's initiative, which has senior leadership support. And then I have a healthy team. I have a robust team for diversity and inclusion function. And put us up against any corporation. We've got a 6-7 person team. You know, and on the field side, we've got a team as well. And so we've got people who are actually embedded with our teams doing the work from a consultative standpoint, rolling up your sleeves, looking at the data, saying, all right, how are we going to move this forward? And that's what I would attribute to our success.
Are you looking at the data? So this is like data about staff and hiring and demographics and the story that it tells. And how does that become a program or a solution or a new policy? What does that look like?
So the great thing about data is when you actually look at it, it tells you the story. If you got good data analytics, and we've got a world-class team. And then it's really obvious what you need to do. And unfortunately, in DEI, I mean, I think everybody thinks, oh, we're supposed to be inclusive for everybody, and it's kumbaya, and you peanut butter spread everything, and the rising tide lifts all boats. And, you know, the hardest thing about driving inclusion is having to do exclusive things. Because you gotta focus in order to drive results.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we realized that we needed to be doing better around racial equity, and there was more that we could do. I mean, to whom much is given, much is expected, right? That's when we focused. And that's where we've seen a tremendous amount of success. Women getting to that 50-50, that was not easy. You know, and because we focused on it, now we see the results. And now maybe we still have a tremendous amount of work to do. I am not up here trying to tell you that things aren't wonky, that there isn't work to be done, and that we aren't behind in some areas. But the proof's in the pudding. Mm-hmm. And it's not just from a diversity counting heads perspective, but it's also around inclusion. Because people are with us and they're not just here, we've hired you, but a year later, their sentiment around my manager values a diverse and inclusive environment. These are some of our questions that we ask in our survey. The company is making progress towards diversity and inclusion, blah, blah, blah. I feel like I have an advocate here. I feel like I belong here. We can see that you're not only here representing, but you also feel like you belong. And that tells us a lot. And then we do things like focus groups to dig even deeper. If we see something that looks a little bit out of whack in one of our organizations or our teams, we're gonna go there. And if you're not doing that, if you're just looking at it from the 100,000 foot level, you're missing that tree in that forest. You gotta look at the trees.
The individual experience.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. In this climate, DEI, we, you know, from 2020 to now, I feel like there's been a lot of high level exposure about the concept of DEI, maybe not the science or theories behind it. So people have DEI means something different to as many people as hear it in many cases. What is something you wish people knew about this work that you think is generally misunderstood or not known?
The flower is not growing in its environment. You don't change the flower. You change the environment.
Message. Wow.
You always see that. Do you understand what I mean? We gotta change that. We gotta change the way we look at it. We gotta change the way we think about our people and our families, how we raise our children. I have 4 children. I gotta be a different mom for her than I do for her, and here I got 4 girls. It's fun. Does that answer your question?
It does. It gave me chills. What's the best thing about leading people?
When you really get to know someone and as a leader, you have to go first, by the way. You have to crack open yourself for your people, which is really hard for those of us who are introverts. You have to crack yourself open and be human. And when they crack open too, and you see them for who they are, and then you work together for years, which is the current situation I have with my amazing team. And you not only become, corporate warriors together, but also friends and work family. That's amazing. And that's hard. That's super, super hard because we don't let our guard down a lot. If you can let even just a little bit of your guard down with people, when it comes to DEI, that's everything. At least I didn't say the F word.
We still got 15 minutes left.
That was mean.
I got two more questions and then questions from the room and the chat. So if you're with us virtually, you start putting your questions in the chat. If you could go back and talk to your 20-something-year-old self, what would you say?
I give her several pieces of advice. I'd say, you gotta address your trauma because trauma is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. And it's gonna come into every facet and corner of your life, at work, and your ability to have the courage to go to that next level or take that opportunity that's coming your way that you're like, I don't even know if this is for me. It's for you. I say often that you can always, not always, but it's much easier to go backwards in your career, and backwards, I don't mean in a bad way, but you can go back to the thing that you were doing before. But when that door opens over here, it might shut, right? If you don't take that opportunity, somebody else is going to take that opportunity. If you don't keep moving forward, you're going to stay where you are. And it's important to understand that your trauma gets in the way of your ability to see and feel like you can actually take that step. Or that you can actually crack open and let other people in, whether it's a partner, whether it's your children, whether it's the people at work. So you've got to address your shit. I grew up as a child of an alcoholic. Not my fault. My responsibility to deal with the stuff that stands in my way of always having to be perfect, always wanting to please, of always wanting to be liked, because I wasn't seen as a child.
Somebody's listening thinking, how do I even approach addressing my trauma? How do I do that?
You can't do it alone. That was another part of the advice that I would give, is that the longer you stay all by yourself in your head, first of all, you talk too much. That head of yours is talking too much. It never shuts up. It keeps talking at 2 o'clock in the morning. I should have bought those shoes. The way she spoke to me the other day really hurt my feelings. Maybe I should try the keto diet. I mean, it never shuts up. You got to get out of your head and talk to a therapist or talk to a really good friend that's going to not necessarily be right, but going to help you see yourself. You've got to have those people that are willing to be like, Corey Joe, I'm seeing this pattern with you or something. And also be like your cheerleaders. You need cheerleaders. Who you surround yourself with, this is another one of those points, is everything. You are who you see. You are what you eat too. But you are who you see. And the mix is everyone. Who is at your table? If your table looks like you're not doing it right. If your kids' table, they all look the same, you got to help them out. And the same goes from a leadership standpoint with your organizations. And it's not just the DEI person's responsibility or the HR person's responsibility, it's all of our responsibility to get diversity of thought, whatever that looks like, at the table, because that's what's going to drive the best results. And one of the things that I think makes me good at what I do is because I have a business background. And I've been in business development and sales, and government relations and all that stuff, which helps me tell a really strong data-driven story around DEI is good for business. And when you talk about it as being part of a company's long-term growth strategy, which is how we talk about it at Northwestern Mutual, doesn't matter if you're red or blue. That's the truth. If you can back it up with year-over-year results, yeah, not perfect, but year-over-year results that show you going in the right direction. It's really, really helpful. So address your trauma. Identify who's sitting at your table. Are they who you need at your table? Do they deserve to be there? Are they serving you? You know, and then of course, are you helping them? Are you serving them? I would say another thing that's really important is that your body is your mind. And what do I mean by that? Again, nothing earth shattering here, but if you're not exercising, even walking, if you're not eating relatively well, if you're not getting enough sleep, if you are not reading, because again, you want a really easy way to escape your mind. Taking out my hair and I don't have a lot of it. You know, like if you don't understand that your cortisol gets trapped in your head when it's body driven, you got to find a way to connect those two. And I wish that I had known that when I was younger, because I am up and most days I am working out at 5:30 in the morning, even when I don't get much sleep, because it has been a game changer. And I try to limit my sugar. I still drink, I still have sugar, I'm not keto and whatever. But you know, like there's a balance there. That's what I need to do at least. But I take care of my body because that's what puts the poison in my head. So that's also one of the things I would say. The last thing I would say is no fear and fail at full speed. Most of the time, you're not gonna fail. But go into it thinking, I'm gonna kill it. I'm gonna fail at full speed. And take that chance, because chances are you're gonna catch yourself. You're not gonna fail. It's gonna be all right. You're gonna learn and grow from it. And so my message really is going back to what I first said. This is not a dress rehearsal. If not you, then who? And you don't have any fear. Take the chances.
Questions in the room?
Talked about building a good team. How do you go about building a good team?
I look for really smart people, but I look for people that have open hearts. You know, match the smart bravado with the open heart. And then I do look for diversity, because the experiences in the room are key. The life experiences and the wisdom that come from that. And that wisdom can come from a 20-something. That wisdom can come from, you know, some of the best people I've ever worked with are the ones that just they're not scars, they're medals of honor. The cuts and the bruises and the wrinkles and the laugh lines and the tear lines, you know, from just having walked a lived experience. So I look for those things: smart, confident, open heart, and scars.
Okay, we'll take a question from the chat.
Do you have any tips on how to get buy-in from leadership who might not see the value in DEI?
Speak to something that matters to them. And 9 times out of 10, if you are in a corporate setting, if you are in a for-profit, even nonprofit setting, I sit on a couple boards, you know, what is their mission? I guarantee you DEI is going to help them fulfill that mission no matter what it is. And I've seen this in how many different sectors have I been in now? Aerospace and defense, technology, insurance and investment. Across the board, you will find something that drives towards their end result, and it's anchored in people. It's anchored in that mix. For us, again, Northwestern Mutual's diversity and inclusion vision is about long-term growth. Whether it's financial or people, that's what it is. It's irrefutable.
From Elizabeth in the chat, some people are saying that the elimination of affirmative action makes it appear that DEI is losing broad support. Can you say something about that? And
You know, I'm not gonna dismiss that. It's totally true, and it shook a lot of us to our core. Like the end of affirmative action is here. What? We have so far to go, right? And affirmative action hasn't been struck down in Title VII, so it hasn't hit corporations. It hit higher ed, so it's not really a thing yet in corporate America. But all of us are like, well, what are we going to do when it is struck down? Because it's not going to last forever, and they never designed affirmative action to last forever either. I don't think we're ready yet, but you know. Most companies aren't out there doing illegal stuff, quotas and putting the wrong people in jobs. Okay, we need to change that narrative that there isn't, that people of color and women aren't just as qualified as anybody else, and that by substituting them, it's just ridiculous, right? We need to move past that, but that's kind of the narrative behind it. But most companies aren't out there doing illegal stuff. The company that starts putting people in jobs because of those types of things is going to fall flat on its face. You always need to hire the right person for the job. But are you interviewing all the people that are out there to find and see that there are lots that look many different ways that can fulfill that job and you should try? Are you casting your net? You know, and so when we look at it, we've done a lot of reviews on this very topic. We're like, first of all, we're not doing anything illegal. We're not the subject of what the people that are on the witch hunt for companies are looking for. And it's about our long-term growth strategy and nothing else. You know, and so I would say, be careful. Look at what you're doing, but 9 times out of 10, you're gonna be fine. You just keep going.
You got a question in the room? Karen?
Hey, Karen.
Can you share with us your team organizational structure?
Sure.
You can describe it for me.
Describe it. So it's me. I've got several senior directors. So these are senior level folks. And then I have a couple project managers. And I would say that a couple members on my team work on our experiences in immersion. So, you know, DEI trainings don't work. We don't sit around and drive results with unconscious bias trainings. Not that not knowing unconscious bias, I mean, that's important. That's not what works. Immersional experiences, sponsorship, mentorship, getting people in rooms and small roundtables, something we do a lot of with our senior leadership team. You know, they work on, so education and immersion and experiences. We've got one amazing person running our ERGs, one person running our D&I councils, which are attached to our business units, if you will. So we've got ERGs focused on affinities, and we've got business units running D&I for their individual functions. We've got someone who's the head of our women's initiative. We've got a couple people who are the heads of our sustained action for racial equity task force. And I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but that's it. And then we have the same duplication, not exactly in the same form, but we also have our field force, our State Farm guys, you know? And so we have a whole team that's looking at what is that field experience and how do we make sure we have a diverse and inclusive environment for our field reps and who's out there in the marketplace. So we've got both teams, and that's really powerful.
That is, what's the number that reports to TV directly?
6.
A lot of people jealous.
Yeah, I mean, it's been great, and that all starts at the top. So that senior leadership support is really important.
yeah, do you have any book recommendations for personal development or a beginner's toolkit?
That's right now I'm reading a book called Lifespan. I think it's like something about like why we age, why we don't have to. And you know, it sounds like psychobabble or whatever, but it's all about some of the things that we know to do. It's exercise, try to get some sleep, it's try to eat remotely healthy. You know, it's those types of things. Let's see. I have to think of a couple others.
Our subjects, if you can't think of the book specifically, should people be looking for certain topics to learn more about or focus on?
So I'm a big civil rights geek, so I would say that if we don't understand our history, we cannot understand how we possibly move forward through what we are faced with today and the continued oppression and systemic issues that we have in our country that we need to get past. So pick up a good book on the civil rights movement, not just history, but also what's happening today. You can find it, read some of the equal justice initiatives work that they have out there, read Brian Stevenson's book. That's stuff that I've read just recently. And then the other thing is, whatever you need to get out of your own head, to take and do that one thing that you really want to do, that dream that you have. Because I still have dreams that I'm carrying on that, you know, that just need to come to life. Whatever kind of book that's going to get you there, read it. And I would like to, if it'll behoove me, leave you with one quote. And it's a King quote because, well, he's amazing, but also because it's germane to the theme of the Anthony Ray Hitton and everything that we're talking about. You may be 38 years old, as I happen to be, and one day some great opportunity stands before you and calls you to stand up to some great principle, some great issue, some great cause, and you refuse to do it because you are afraid. You refuse to do it because you want to live longer. You're afraid that you will lose your job, or you're afraid that you will be criticized, or that you will lose your popularity, or you're afraid that somebody will stab you, or shoot you, or bomb your house, so you refuse to take the stand. Well, you may go on and live until you're 90, but you're just as dead at 38 as you would be at 90. And the cessation of breathing in your life is but the belated announcement of an earlier death of spirit. And he was assassinated the next day. Have courage and go out there and get your life.
Everyone, and Hanneman.